Greetings. It's Monday, October the 13th, 2025. I'm Thomas Caldwell of the Aurelian Column on the road, and this is the Monday Morning Report. My, the headlines are so much fun these days, although we don't have newspapers anymore, so headlines is kind of a misnomer. Let's just say the stuff that's flying across our eyeballs on the internet. Well, Pakistan and Afghanistan seem to be at each other. So much for Muslim Brotherhood, eh? You have people in the United States protesting the government enforcing laws that every other country on earth enforces, namely illegal immigration. Oh, where else is going on here? Yes, law firms are talking about hackers getting into their databases. So much for attorney-client privilege, if the Chinese know what you're talking about with your lawyer. Anything else? Oh, a lot. American soldiers are marching in streets in the United States. Well, let me just simply go back to what today is. Columbus Day. Finally, no more Indigenous Peoples Politically Correct Day. Columbus Day, which could be changed to something else, and we'll discuss that later. Well, let's see here. Why are we celebrating today or taking the 3 days off on this weekend? Well, it has to do with the reasons things are so crazy in the world right now. And that's something that Sir Isaac Newton taught us. And that is, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. American cities have become sewers filled with crime, drugs, all sorts of horror. And if a city goes, the area around it goes. A civilization is defined by its municipalities. And the United States is a mess. Is it any surprise that whoever's in charge, in this case President Trump, is going to want to send in troops? Arguably, though, that's not very effective. Has to be a more holistic approach. You bring a bunch of National Guardsmen into town, the only people that are going to be happy about it are those selling fast food. Well, this is something that everybody wants to do is blame. Oh, he's doing this, he's doing that. Well, when a civilization decides to take on a self-inflicted frontal lobotomy, which is what the United States has been doing for the last half century, it seems, the average person who isn't into frontal lobotomies is going to react, which is why you're seeing this. And everybody's quick to criticize and quick to blame and believe what they want to believe. There we have it. People think they have the right to believe what they feel like. Do they? No, they don't. There's always a limit to that. Outside of religion, which is by definition something weird, whether we like to talk about it or not, it's as private as people's sex lives, which is also something that shouldn't be discussed in public. You can take that for what you want. So why does this have to do with Columbus Day? All the craziness you're seeing in the headlines? Well, it's simple. Nobody wants the truth. I like to call today Everybody is to Blame Day. Now, Christopher Columbus, we all knew, sailed the ocean blue in 1492. He was not the first person to make it to North America that we know of. The Vikings got here, and there are some indications that the Romans actually showed up at one point, even though that might have been a one-way trip for some of them. But that's not the real important thing. It's when the North American continent began to be settled by Europeans. Now, those who are politically correct and also hate their own ethnic background, and this is what I mean by self-hating white people, love to say this is when Europeans invaded North America. No, they didn't. They weren't immigrants. They came here to settle. And history throughout the planet is about one people moving into territory of another. The Carthaginians of North Africa, for example, came from what is now the Syrian part of the Middle East. And also that goes into where American Indians came from. Oh, and I use the term American Indian, not Native American, which is nonsense. And who said it was nonsense? A man named Russell Means. Now, a lot of people don't know who Russell Means was, but I like to call him the modern George Washington of the American Indians, recovering the attempted genocide. And yes, the federal government did try to genocide the Indians of North America. And he fought back at a place called Wounded Knee in 1973, along with a lot of other people, and the entire resurgence we've seen of American Indians began there. And if you're interested in learning some facts about American Indians, I would recommend reading the book Where White Men Fear to Tread by Mr. Russell Means, the late Mr. Russell Means. It's a brilliant book. And also look into the Wounded Knee uprising, which was more than 70 days, where American Indians had a gunfight most of the time with the FBI. And people don't even remember this. At the same time, where did American Indians come from? Did they pop out of the earth? No. I would recommend checking out a documentary, and you can find it where most videos are found. I won't endorse any of them. And that is called Ice Age Columbus. Look it up. It's about a 2-hour documentary on the fact, well, at least the theory that is probably a fact, that the eastern part of North America was settled by Europeans during the last ice age. Makes perfect sense, and we have archaeological evidence to prove it, namely Clovis points, another thing you can research on your own, that were found in the Virginia area of what is now the United States. Everybody isn't interested in the truth. American Indians don't want to hear that, and right-wing Americans don't want to hear that American Indians were genocided in this country, and they really were. Also, that Europeans, namely the British, settled Hong Kong to sell opium, and it's estimated that 500 million Chinese died over the years from opium poisoning. See, everybody's to blame. Slavery in North America, the first slaves were Irish. We don't like to say that, but they were. And you talk about indigenous people. What people were the first to settle Southwest Africa? I'll give you a hint. They're not from Africa. They were from Europe. That was the Boers. Yeah, there was no evidence of any civilization of any kind, any settlements of any kind in Southwest Africa before the Dutch showed up. They didn't run into the Zulus for 130 years as they moved inland. They're indigenous, and they're being genocided right now by that criminal organization known as the African National Congress. You see, everybody's to blame for something nasty. There's not one source. Liberal American education, trying to teach people to hate their history and their culture, and those that founded their country. Part of it, a lot of it is just plain ignorance. People don't want to read anymore. They want to look on their phones or just Google things. There's a lot of people to blame for all the misery in the world. The United Nations, yeah, they don't even adhere to their own definition of genocide. If they did, they'd be applying it to what's happening in South Africa right now. But in going over the United Nations documentation not that long ago, I found out that they had an Orwellian term for tolerance, saying that tolerance means respect. No, it does not. Tolerance means putting up with something you don't like for the sake of peace. A baby crying on an airplane. You're not going to go over and smother the thing or tell the mother to break its neck. You're just going to put up with it. You're going to tolerate it. You don't like it. Doesn't make you feel good. But doing otherwise would be the wrong thing. What we need in this world, quite frankly, is not affixing blame with someone and getting them to apologize. Oh, the Chinese and Japanese have been playing that game for a long time. That's another story. Getting people to apologize sincerely and deeply and not enough. Oh, give me a break. All of humanity has hands drenched in blood. And until we can start to accept that fact, and that is a fact, that everybody's to blame for something nasty, it's going to continue and continue and continue, and the headlines you see today are going to continue and continue and continue and probably get a lot worse. See, what we need now is for people to think for themselves, but also get your information from reliable sources. When I started off in the news business, it was a sacred calling. Now, any Tom, Dick, or Harry and their pet dog can go on YouTube and spout what they claim is legitimate information, which is why you have so many people who think the earth is flat. That's insane. It really is nuts. It shows a distinct lack of the ability to grasp even basic reality. That's how far removed people have become. We're supposed to be intelligent life? Well, that's debatable at this point. No, what we need is a change of consciousness on this planet. I hate using that word sometimes because so many New Age ninnies that dangle crystals over their heads think something about it. But we really do need a change of attitude. That's probably the best thing to call it. Change of attitude. Realize everybody's to blame for something. Now, the first step, and I'm going to say this today on what I call Everyone's to Blame Day, the first step is to avoid feeling as opposed to thinking. Now, if you walk up to someone, say, of what we like to say African American heritage in this country, and you say, what do you think about slavery? Well, if you ask them to think, they'll say, well, it was a pretty bad idea. It caused a lot of suffering. And if you want to get them really intellectual, that's how human beings basically harnessed mass amounts of production before industrialization. And you can get into an intellectual discussion. What do you think of the history of slavery? Okay. But if you ask someone, how do you feel about slavery? That's going to touch a different part of the brain that has nothing to do with solving problems. Pure emotion. And that's one of the tricks they've been using on us all these years. They don't want us to think anymore. They want us to feel. And once you get into pure emotion taking over your rational thought, there's nowhere to go but down. And down is where we've been going. So, in reality, North America was settled by peoples that came from Europe across the ice sheet that covered the North Atlantic in the Ice Age. And it was also covered by peoples who came across the Bering Strait. Wouldn't it have been wonderful to be there when the entire human race met for the first time around the globe? Probably about 10,000 years ago. We're not really sure. But at some point, that must have been fascinating to see. That's something to think about. We've thrown away the scientific process, and this doesn't mean that today's so-called scientists or academics are anything like their predecessors. They're more interested in a paycheck than they are of actually learning new things in all too many cases. But I would like you to set aside today and not be emotional about Columbus Day replacing Indigenous Peoples Day, or was it genocide when Europeans came to North America, or all the Bantu that came down from northern Africa into what is South Africa came there after Europeans had settled it? See, when you go after the truth, you can only do so if you hold in your mind the fact that you could be totally wrong about just about anything that you're thinking. That's progress. Indeed, that's true wisdom. So put on your wise wizard caps today and for the foreseeable future. Ask yourself why things are going on. And don't give in to the emotion. We have way too much of that right now. We need rational thought. Civilization is not built on emotion. It's built on facts. It's built on reality. And more important, it's built. That's it for today. If you appreciate my work, please like, subscribe, and share. Share with your friends and share with your enemies and hope that they can wake up to reality. Some of them need to. I can be reached at feedback@aureliancolumn.com. That's feedback@aureliancolumn.com. I'm up on X. My handle there is MICCAMPEN. That's MICCAMPEN. This podcast originates at Substack. My handle there is aureliancolumn.substack.com and is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and elsewhere such media can be accessed. Until we meet again, be good, be safe, be vigilant, and remember Clown World, the Deep State, and all enemies of rational thought must be destroyed. Good day.